I want to be true of my family like 30 or 40 years from now? Like even after I'm gone, like when my grandchildren are grown one day, like what do I want to be true? Like most people never write that down, never take the time to think through it. But once you do that, then you can kind of work backwards and say, well, if I want that to be true, what do I need to start doing today?
Welcome, Model FAs. David DeSalle here, president of Model FA and your host of the Model FA podcast. I am very, very excited about the guest that we have today. Blake Brewer and I had a fantastic conversation in advance of this podcast and brought out some emotions on my end. I think it will bring out some emotions on your end as well. And one of the things at Model FA that we have a very strong belief in, or I should say two things that we have strong beliefs in. One would include making sure that you're doing an intentional, great job with layering on a client experience component on top of your service model so that you can make people feel great about working with you. And ultimately that will drive introductions into your business. And then also having a big focus on generational planning. Not only do we believe it's the right thing to do for the families that you serve, but it increases your business's value when you go to exit your business because it's a multi-generational shop. So without further ado, I do want to introduce Blake. He has a very powerful story that he's going to start with, and then we'll get into how you can leverage the things that he does and provides for folks into your business as well to really hit on that generational planning and experience component that I just mentioned. Blake does have a powerful personal story, as I mentioned, that led him to this mission, which is helping millions of dads and moms take a big step towards leaving a legacy, a lasting legacy, I should say, in their children's lives. Blake offers a unique opportunity for advisors who want to become a trusted life partner faster and with more of their clients. So with that, Blake, I'm pretty fired up about this episode. Welcome to the show.
David, I'm glad to be here, man. You're right. We did have a good conversation a few weeks ago. And so I'm glad to see you again and to do this episode.
Awesome. So I know in your bio, obviously based on our conversation as well, your mission is to help millions of dads and moms leave a lasting legacy. So before we even get into how to go about doing that, help us understand why this is even a thing for you. Like, where was this idea born from? I know we talked about a personal experience of yours, and we were only able to kind of crack the surface of that. And you promised me you'd go deeper on that in our call today or our podcast today. So I'm going to start off with a super general question. Where did this all start from? And we'll go from there.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. I mean, I never in a million years would I have thought that this is what I would be doing, helping moms and dads connect with their children on a deeper level, to influence their children more, to leave that lasting legacy. But it all goes back to something that my dad did for me. And if my dad had not done this for me, and I'm going to share the story of what he did, I wouldn't be here today. Like my life would be totally different. And it's a rather simple concept of what my dad did. But I would have never imagined that I would be helping parents do this thing, but also partnering with advisors that help advisors become that trusted partner in their client's life and to help them go from more of a transactional relationship to those deeper relationships. And so it's really exciting for me. But as I share this story, the two words to really be thinking about is your words and influence. And so I believe that the most powerful words spoken on the planet are spoken by a dad or by a mom. And so there's words that I could go share with my children today that would absolutely wreck their life. Like there's some things I could say to them. I have 3 kids. Now you could say it to them and it might hurt their feelings, but man, if I said it, it'd be really hard for them to overcome. But on the opposite of that, there's some words that I could say to my children that would bring them more confidence as they go through life, as they hit bad spots and, hard times. Like I could help them get through that with my words. And you'll understand this with my dad's story. And then with influence, all of us as parents want to be influencing our children. And when you start off as a parent, which David, you don't have children, correct?
Not that I know of.
when you have children one day, you're going to think, oh, okay, yeah, I've got some little kids here and, I'll be able to control them. And you quickly realize you cannot control your children. You try, but the older that they get, every single day that goes by, your control over them is less and less. And so like my mom cannot call me up today and say, "Hey, you should go eat at this restaurant tonight," or "You should move to this town." It's like she has zero control over me, but she can influence me. And so here's the story of my dad. So when I was 19 years old, I get a call from my mom. And I was at the University of Arkansas, and she says, "We're going to Hawaii, family trip." And so we head to Hawaii, and man, I'm excited to be there. And it was for a lot of reasons going to Hawaii, but also to be there with my family. My freshman year, I'm not hanging out with my family. You go back, my high school years, I'm not trying to hang out with my family. I'm trying to hang out with my friends. And so this is just a fun time to be there with my family. First day that we're there, I'm standing there next to my dad on the beach. We're about to jump in and go snorkeling. And my dad was a really good dad. By no means was he the perfect dad. And he had a lot of shortcomings. And I realized that, the older I get and now that I'm a dad. But man, my dad was still my hero. And so I'm standing there next to him. And even though I was 19, I still felt like a little kid next to him. Now, partly because he was a big guy. He was 6'3", 230, had been drafted by the Atlanta Falcons to play tight end. He was more well known as Terry Bradshaw's tight end at Louisiana Tech. And so they were best friends and roommates. And my dad, he never told anybody. Like, he was so humble. Like, he would never tell anybody that. But I told everybody. So I'm standing there next to my dad, and my dad looks at me with a big smile and says, "Blake, I'm glad you're out here with me." And we jumped in the water, and he made me feel like $1,000,000 in that moment. And we go further and further out into the water, and we end up in an area called Witch's Brew, which is known for its treacherous waters, which it was that day. And my dad and I get separated, and I can't find him. And I start scanning the water. Where'd he go? And then I see him. And my dad is treading water, but I could tell that he was 100%. And he started yelling out for help. And when he started yelling out for help, he normally has this deep booming voice, but this yell for help was more like a whimper. And so I knew I had to get over there as quickly as I could. And by the time I got to my dad, he was underneath the water, and he was just kind of floating there, and he was unconscious. And so I put my arms around my dad, and I knew I had to get him to shore as quickly as I could. And to the best of my ability, I tried to hold my dad's head above water and swim with him. And the shore wasn't like right there. I had to swim around this rock, and it was very difficult. And by the time we got him to shore, the lifeguards had showed up, and they started doing CPR to my dad. And I was on my hands and knees next to my dad, just really just praying to God, like, "God, please save my dad's life." And I knew that surely, or I just felt that like he was going to come to, and then it was going to be like the movies where he kind of opens his eyes and the water, just kind of flicker, comes out of his mouth, his eyes flickering, but it never happened. And so my dad ended up drowning that day. And so it went from one of like the best moments of my life, and in a matter of minutes, it's the worst. And my life has changed forever. And I'm sitting there just in shock, like, what the heck just happened? And I'm asking, how am I going to make it without my dad? How's my family going to make it without my dad? So it was a few hours after that, my mom, my sister, and brother and I, we had gone to the hospital. We saw my dad's body laying there. We go back to the condo, and I'm sitting on the edge of the bed in the back room, still in shock. And my mom appears in the doorway, and she said, "I found something that I know that your dad was going to give you. It was in his briefcase." Well, I, of course, had no idea what she was talking about, but she's holding some sheets of paper in her hands. And so she walks across the room and hands me these sheets of paper. And at the top, it says, "Dear Blake, Natalie, and Marcus," my sister and brother's name. She said, "For the last 2 months, your dad has been writing you guys a letter. Here's your copy." And so my dad had written us a letter, having no idea that he was about to die. He was going to give me the letter that weekend. And I'm sitting there reading what would become my dad's last words to me. And David, I got to tell you, it was everything that I needed in that moment. I began reading this letter, and he was sharing how he felt about us, but also some advice. And I didn't even get halfway through, and I just felt so loved that my dad would take the time. Like, don't tell me my dad didn't love me. My dad took the time to write this on paper, and how he felt about us and give us some advice. And I get to the last line of the letter, and I believe only God could have allowed him to write this, but he wrote, "As you're being faithful to God, you're often going to find yourself in the minority here on earth. But I assure you that in heaven, you'll be in the majority. Love your dear old dad. And that was exactly what I needed. I was like, man, my dad is in heaven right now. And I joke with people like, if God gave him the option to come back, he wouldn't do it. He'd say, no, I'll just stay right here and wait on you guys. And so as the next year of my life, as I grieved really hard, my dad's letter really helped me get through it. It gave me hope, gave me direction. And so my dad took the most powerful thing that he had, his words, he put them on paper. And when he put them on paper, it increased the impact of his words because there's just something about reading this. Like my dad wrote this, like he really meant it and he made it lasting. And he made those words to 19 years later. His words are still influencing me. As I graduated from college with my accounting degree and started my career, and I got married and started having kids through the ups and downs of all that, there's my dad's words and guiding me. So I can't tell you, I can't even imagine where I would be if my dad had not written that letter in my darkest moment after my dad took care of me. He provided for me. He protected me from making some really bad decisions as I was trying to potentially escape the pain that I was feeling. And he guided me. So that's my story, what my dad did for me.
That's heavy. And, I just have like my dad in mind as you're kind of chatting through that and kind of the devastation involved in the idea of losing him. But the fact that, talk about serendipity and timing or the way the universe works, like the fact that he even had that foresight to provide that letter and with everything that ended up happening. I mean, and often in these conversations, I need to make a joke to, kind of move past the emotions, but like,
Feel free, man. You
shit,
can make a
man, that
joke.
was really good timing, you know? And clearly it's, had an impact on you. I would assume your siblings. I mean, man, even your mom, I can just imagine her bawling her eyes out, reading through that as well. So it's really cool, all things considered, that it shook out the way it did. Now, that story has now turned into a business.
Yeah.
Tell us about what it is that you're doing now. And I know that you partner with a lot of advisors, both on an individual level and at a firm level. So help us understand how you've taken that story and developed it into something that can help other folks feel as impacted as you felt in that moment.
Yeah. And before I share that, I do want to say my dad had really good life insurance. And so my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't have to go back to work because of this, because my dad had good life insurance. And so a couple of things I tell people, I'm so grateful my dad had good life insurance and I know the value of his life insurance. But the letter that he wrote me, I can't even put a value on it. Like it's priceless.
I'm glad you brought that up because I feel like, and this is coming from, I spent 7 years at Northwestern, which was heavy on the insurance side. And people can say all they want about Northwestern. I know the independent space, has certain viewpoints about Northwestern. And I share some of those viewpoints, having left Northwestern and been exposed to the independent space. But one thing that they did really well, for better or for worse, in terms of the way in which they went about it, is it was very rare that anyone who worked with Northwestern was underinsured. And I give them a lot of credit for the insurance that they put in place. And I've seen insurance have an impact. I've seen insurance not be around and the impact that it's had on a family. And I think a lot of independent advisors are really good with being holistic in their financial plan. But I also come across, a lot of independent folks where because, it's not the main focus, they can have a recommendation down, for a certain amount of life insurance, but the client drags their feet in doing so. And as you had experienced, like, it's not okay to go through the underwriting after vacation. Like, let's get this
Right.
now, So I'm glad that you brought that aspect up.
Oh, yeah. So then my mom, gets this money, like more money than she's ever had. And she was scared. She told me, she's like, I do not have the earning power that your dad did. And so I've got to protect this money. Like this money's got to last. And so she had to find a trusted person, a trusted advisor to help her. And it was an independent advisor, actually, who sat down with her and he had to gain her trust. And so he said some things to help her understand like what he was about and to gain her trust. And I'm glad he did because he was a very trustworthy guy. And man, this guy, and I joke with people, and Jody Wingrove, he became the most trusted person in my mom's life, like
Mm.
trusted man outside of family. And through the recession of '08 and '09, like my mom slept well at night because she had this trusted advisor in her life. And so I know the value of having that person, an advisor in your life that you can trust. And so it's crazy. I never knew that I was going to be the one to help advisors gain more trust with their clients with my program. So let me back up. So it was a few years ago that I went to write a letter to my children. You know, if anyone knows the value of a letter from their dad, it's me. I don't know when my last day on the planet's going to be. I want to have something written down for them, but also I see the world that they're growing up in and all of the messages that they're having to navigate and the different people who are trying to influence them. Actually, I saw a stat the other day that I think there's over 3 million social media influencers. And I'm sure a lot of those people are great people, but a lot of them are not. And I don't want them influencing my children, even the good ones. I want to be the number one influence
Mm.
in my children's life. And so I just want to be really clear about how I feel about them, what our family values are. And so I go to write this letter and I'm staring at this blank sheet of paper and I'm like, what the heck do I write? Like, how do I do this? Like, it was just really difficult to do. And it just like hung over my head and then just really had to power through, like get it done. And I eventually get it done. And I decide to, and it felt amazing to get it done. Like I was like, man, I did something here. Like it
Yeah.
was, it was really rewarding. It's just like, man, this is one of my top milestones in my fatherhood journey. And so then I decided to read it to my daughter when she was 4.
Mm.
And, each night, normally I'm reading her like a book or princess book. And this night I said, hey, I want to read you something that daddy wrote. She had no idea what was coming. And I started reading it. I had no idea what was coming because I got emotional and I started
Right.
like crying in front of my daughter. And she had never seen that before. But, I put my heart and soul into this thing. And you're just wondering, what in the world is she thinking right now? And so I finish it and I look up at her and she looks at me and she says, Daddy, can you read me that princess book now? And I'm like, yeah, I can read it. But then the next day at dinner, she went up to my wife and she said, last night, Daddy read me a message. Can he read me that message again tonight? And so my daughter, she didn't understand all the concepts in the letter. She will in time as she grows older, but she got the main one. She's got a daddy that loves her. And so around that same time, 2 different people at 2 different occasions tell me a story about getting a life-changing letter from their dad. They don't know my story at all. They're just like sharing this. And so finally on the second one, I was like, okay, God, I get it. I got to help more people get a letter from their dad. And so I went into research mode and started reading books and articles, looked at the elements of my dad's letter and said, okay, what, if I was to help a dad write a letter, what are the elements that we need to put in there? Like, what does everyone want to hear from their dad? And so created a process to where dads can communicate, I love you. And it's unconditional. There's nothing you can do tomorrow to make me love you more or less. I love the story that Kobe Bryant shared about a year before his death. And so he said when he was 12 years old, he was playing basketball in a summer league. And his dad and grandfather had played in this league. And he wanted to do really well. Well, he gets to the end of the summer and he had not scored a single point the entire summer. And so he's frustrated. And the interviewer asked him, and it was like, well, why didn't you score? He's like, well, dude, to be honest, I just sucked. Like I wasn't good. But he was still frustrated. And his dad, he said, my dad came up to me and put his arm around me and said, Kobe, I don't care whether you score 0 points or 60 points. I'm going to love you no matter what. And Kobe said that that was literally the best thing his dad could have ever told him. Because at that point, he could just go for it. Like he couldn't fail. Like no matter what happens, his dad's going to love him no matter what. And so that message was playing through his entire NBA career. He's telling a story like 40. And so anytime through the ups and downs, like, man, my dad's going to love me no matter what. And so this is what I help parents communicate and write on paper because that's the message we want in our children's head. It gives them more confidence, raises their emotional intelligence, communicate, I'm proud of you, not for what you've done, but for who you are. I believe in you, put intentional memories into the letter, apologize if needed to. And then pretty soon after that, I help create the same similar process to help moms write the letter as well. But dad started signing up all over the country to write the letter, like CEOs, business guys, blue collar guys, guys in the NFL, and then some military guys, help some special forces guys write the letter, and then some financial advisors signed up. And they're like, oh my gosh, like this is perfect for our practice. Like we want to help our clients write this letter. Like we want to help them more than just have a financial legacy. We want to help them pass down their virtues and really invest in their children. And so created a program to help their clients write the letter. And so that's, like I said, I could have never imagined I was going to partner with advisors, but man, it is such a win for me because what I care about is finished letters from dad and from mom. And then advisors are out there helping me get that done. And it's a win for the advisor and their business because it's allowing them to have conversations with their clients around their family and, have more trusted relationships. And so does that answer your question?
It does. What's some of the feedback that you've gotten from advisors when they actually do roll this out? Like, what are they hearing from their clients? Are their clients like, no? Are they like, wow, this is amazing? Like, what are you hearing?
Yeah. So, it's not, writing a letter isn't like some new thing, right? And, it's been around forever. But when coupled with my story of my dad writing me a letter, that's what really gets people and it says, okay, yeah, I need to do this. And so advisors share my story. I have a landing page that each advisor I work with that we build for them and they send their clients to it and it has a video of my story. And so advisors will share that with them either like in an annual review or they send it out in an email. And then some advisors will have me speak virtually to their clients, but pretty much after their clients like hear my story, they're like, okay, I get it. Yep, I need to write this letter.
It's the impact that it has on the family itself, as you alluded to with your letter compared to the life insurance policy. It's priceless. It's invaluable. I'm curious to know, and perhaps you can hit on kind of like a few kind of key points, maybe about the process that someone would go through. So as much as like, I like you and I like the idea of what you're doing, the devil's advocate in me says, okay, cool. What if they just write a letter on their own and don't kind of go through the program that you have? Now, I know that, part of it's like, well, picture yourself when you sat down in front of the piece of paper, you're like, I'm at a loss for words all of a sudden. But I'm curious to know, like, if an advisor were to bring this to a client and the client says, yep, that's cool. What does that process look like to develop the letter? And is this like a one session sort of thing that they participate in? Is it like over a weeks long period, multi days, multi weeks? Like, help us understand what the process looks like for a client to go through.
Yeah, so the program is 10 videos. And so the client logs in on the advisor's landing page. So they log into the program and each video walks you through a section of the letter and explains the why and the how and gives examples of how you could write it. And then also have several lessons to kind of help you prepare your heart and mind to write this letter. So where you're really thinking through, like, what do I want to be true of my family like 30 or 40 years from now? Like even after I'm gone, like when my grandchildren are grown one day, like what do I want to be true? Like most people never write that down, never take the time to think through it. But once you do that, then you can kind of work backwards and say, well, if I want that to be true, what do I need to start doing today? And so then it also helps you write this letter. And then also help parents evaluate their mission statement if they've never written one. And then if they haven't, or sorry, if they have written one, and if they haven't, write one and come up with their core values. Then we have a couple other things where I help them think through if your dad or if your mom had written you a letter, what would you have wanted them to say to you? And so it's a really powerful exercise. I get unbelievable feedback on that. And so really in writing this letter, it's, people are doing it for their children, but the dad or the mom that goes through the process, they're the ones who feel the immediate impact. Like on the advice section, I say, okay, dad, mom, pretend you've got 30 days to go and you're on your deathbed. What advice, as you think about your children, no matter whether your children are currently 40 years old or whether they're newborn or teenagers, they have the rest of their life in front of them. So what advice can you give them to help them get through the ups and downs of life? Think through 4 or 5. Well, the process of thinking through, what is like 4 or 5 pieces of advice if I was in that situation? Like you end up kind of preaching to yourself, like, oh yeah, I need to be doing better here. And then as parents write this letter to their children, they're evaluating their own life and, their purpose. And then they begin to live out the letter. But when someone asks me like, okay, I could do this on my own, or could I sign up for your program? Because individuals can sign up for the program. They hear me on a podcast or they see me in the news and they can sign up and go through it on their own. And for those that are paying, we offer a money back guarantee. Like if we don't help you write a better letter than
Hmm.
what you would have written on your own, we'll give you your money back. And I've helped people who would say they're not writers at all. Here's the thing. I would say I'm not a writer. Now I am working on a book, but I'm not naturally like a gifted writer. And you don't have to be a gifted writer. But I've also helped authors like write this letter. And they've said, you helped me write a better letter than what I would have written on my own because, we've done the research and we know the things that your children need to hear from you. And so we don't want anything to be left out. And then a lot of it is just the accountability of it. Like you sign up for a program, like you're more likely to start and finish it. What I tell people is Tom Brady has a quarterback coach, best quarterback of all time. I know you live down there by him. And
You're
like
bringing up my man.
he's in your neighborhood, right? And so, yeah, he has a quarterback coach, he has a nutritionist coach. Like, the reason that Tom Brady is still playing in the NFL and still playing at the level he's at is because he has people helping him do it. And there's no shame in that, right? And so I tell parents when they're writing the letter, like, you might even think about in the intro section of the letter saying, yeah, I went through a program to help me write this letter. Because what are you communicating? You're communicating, hey, I cared enough about you that I got some help to write this letter. Because we sign up for programs for work to get some different coaching or help. Like there's no shame in that. Why? Because work matters. Like, and the same thing with our children. Our children matter. This letter matters. And so I would say, even if you didn't think you need, like sign up for just to say you signed up for, like, hey, I loved you enough to get some help writing this letter. But at the end of the day, like, we'll help you get the letter done is the main thing.
I'm sure you've seen a variety of things, but now is this something that folks tend to share like right when they're done? They wait for certain life stages, they kind of have it packaged within their estate plan for, when they pass. Like what are people actually doing with the letter?
Yeah, I love that question. I got my dad's letter after he died, but he was going to give it to me that weekend. Like he knew that his 19-year-old son needed his words and he wanted to influence me, be a positive influence. And so I tell parents, this is your letter. So you can give it whenever you want. Like if you want it waiting for when you die, absolutely. I had a dad send me a letter this weekend, have me look over it. And he said, man, I'm planning on leaving it for when I die. His kids are like early 20s. But what do you think? And I said, man, if I was your son, I would want this letter now.
Mhm.
And the words that you have written are so powerful. Like if you follow this blueprint, like that's so powerful. Like that your children have decisions and different things that they're going through next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now. And you want your words to influence them. You want to have that deeper relationship with them, whether it's they experience a loss and your words can help them get through it. Or maybe it's just like they're going in on a job interview 6 months from now and they're feeling nervous about it. But your words can provide the confidence that they need to do well. It's kind of like Kobe Bryant. Like, man, he could just go for it. Like, he couldn't fail. Like, his dad was going to love him no matter what. And so that's the power, I think, of giving this letter sooner rather than later. A lot of parents will couple it around like Christmas, Thanksgiving, or a birthday. There's a lot of parents that are going to be writing their letter at the beginning of the school year.
Mhm.
So definitely those transition points in someone's life is a great time to give it.
And this is true for me that sometimes I'm not the best with my spoken words as I am my written words. So, like, whether it's my mom or dad's birthday or, my girlfriend or whoever, I always buy a blank card and write my words because it's difficult in the moment to articulate that, verbally as opposed to like writing it on paper. So I feel like there are also words that you may have never expected to hear from your mom or dad because you can articulate your message differently and perhaps better in written form as opposed to, verbal.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you can, put some thought behind it and like get it all out there versus when you're sitting across the table from someone, maybe it doesn't come out the way that you meant or you
Hmm.
didn't get it all there. But man, I love when I hear about the stories of when a dad or mom is given the letter. I got a story in this past weekend and he gave the letter to his 24-year-old son. He just graduated college, just starting his first job. So he was moving to a new city. and they were the only ones at home. He called them in the living room and said, "Hey, I've got something for you. I've written you a letter and I've really put a lot of thought into it." And then he had to preface to tell his son, "Hey, just so you know, I'm not dying. like I just really wanted to write you a letter." And he said before his son even read the letter, like his son got choked up and said, "I'd never really seen him like this before." And he said just the look on his face was priceless. Like I'll never forget it. And then he takes the letter, he reads it, comes back an hour later, and they have a discussion around the letter and what he wrote. And he said, "Man, it was just like one of those top dad moments. Like I will never forget it." Another dad gave it to his son on Christmas morning, and his son was actually like early 20s as well. And his son opens it up and kind of looks at it, kind of gives his dad, didn't read it yet, but just said, "Oh, thanks, Dad." That's all he says to him. And so, like, it's like 4 or 5 months later, and his dad still had no idea, like, what is the letter meant to his son. His son never said anything. Well, then he gets a call from his buddy. His buddy had been hanging out with his son, and his buddy says, "Your son just told me that you wrote him a letter and gave it to him at Christmas. He told me that it's his most treasured possession and he reads it every single week." And the dad had no idea. His son didn't know how to communicate it to him, I guess.
Maybe you got to have a program to help sons and daughters articulate to
Yeah.
their parents now. That's an idea for expansion.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I tell parents, some of you, when your kids open this letter, you're going to get that instant moment of like, "Oh, Dad, I love you." There's tears shed. Like, this is awesome. But we're not writing the letter for our kids to, pat us on the back and say, "Oh, you're the best dad," or "You're the best mom ever." We're doing it because we know it's the right thing to do. Like, our children need our influence. They need our words. And so that's why we're doing it. And then over time, our children will tell us how much they appreciate it. Sometimes children, like, they get the letter and they can't fully appreciate it for whatever reason. Like, they're going through something in their life, but then there will be a time where they will, and it is influencing their life. And the second you die, like, the letter becomes that much more valuable, right? Because there's nothing more coming at that point.
For sure. Well, I love it. Before we transition, I want to, outside of the impact and all the things that we've talked about, I do want to transition briefly and just make a quick comment for a business case for including this. From an experience standpoint, no other advisor really, in your area, I would assume at this point is doing something like this. This is a way that you can stand out immediately when you build this into your process during, client reviews or maybe throughout the onboarding process.
Yep.
Once it settles down, like this is something that people will talk about to their family and friends because they're going to tell them about their kid's reaction of the process going through it. And then their next question is going to be, where'd you come across this? And then boom, you're in the conversation. On top of that, from a generational planning standpoint, when the children learn who kind of was the precipice of their parents doing this exercise, do you think they're more or less likely to want to work with you themselves, either when they're at a point to where they can work with you or, when those assets are transitioned? I think we can all agree it's not guaranteed, but it's more likely that they would stay with you. So from a business case, it makes all the sense in the world. So I just want to make sure to hit on that. But to transition, and we're kind of sticking on a similar theme here. So one of the things, if it's the first time listening to our podcast, first of all, this is a badass episode to be the first one if you are listening. But one of the things that I ask all of our guests is a book that's had an impact on them as a way to distill a reading list to the folks that are on the podcast. And the book that you chose was Take Back Your Family by Jefferson Bethke. Why'd you choose that book and what's the impact that it had on you?
Well, I'm in the middle of starting a business for 2 years in. I've got 3 young kids at home. And so I'm trying to be the best dad that I can and also provide and, also serve clients. And so this book just really impacted me as it gave me some historical perspective on family. Like, you start thinking about before the Industrial Revolution and for most of human history, like, dads, so I'm reading from the perspective of dad, like, get to be around their family. Like, your kids are with you on the farm and you're able to pass down those values to your children as you're spending time with them. But then the Industrial Revolution happens. And then also another thing that I never even knew for most of human history, like families lived together. Like you lived very close to like grandparents, and they were all a lot of times in the same house or like in the same complex, I guess. And then in like the 20s, people started living like you started moving out and having your own separate houses. Well, that affects the family and it affects children as they're growing up. For most of human history, like their identity is like so shaped in family, and there's so much confidence in that. Like there's so much kind of this like this protection, like, hey, we're okay, like we're a family. But now in the culture that we grew up in, it's not so much, it's not like that at all. And so for me, I was just thinking, okay, not that I'm trying to go back, 100 years or 1,000 years, but in the way that our culture exists today, like how can I be a present dad for my family? How can I link them to our family? So now, like, I try to get our grandparents, my wife's parents, my mom to like tell stories about our family, like
Mm,
around their grandparent or about their grandparents. So, like, let my children know, like, hey, you're a part of something much bigger than just yourself. It's not just you, like, you're a part of this family.
love it. Yeah, I'll have to check that one out. I haven't come across that one before. Now, last thing before we wrap up, I do want to hit on the fact that one of the cool things when advisors partner with you is you do help co-brand a landing page for them so that their logo and their photo and their company name is throughout that landing page. So if I'm an advisor and I want to check this out some more and consider adding this to my client experience and generational planning, where's the best place to connect with you? And I think you mentioned that you had some sort of deal for the listeners as well. So feel free to bring that up as well.
Yeah, so we do have a landing page for Model FA. So if you go to legacyletterchallenge.com/Model FA, that's just for advisors, and you can look at the different packages that we offer, get more information. But we've got the basic package, silver and gold. The basic, in my opinion, every advisor at least needs this one. And so that allows you to provide my program to all of your clients and potential clients, future clients. When an individual signs up, like they just hear me on a podcast or something, they're paying $147. But when an advisor purchases this program, the clients get it for free, and the advisor is paying $1,000 annually, or they can pay $99 a month. We also have a $1,500 one-time setup fee. And so I'm excited about this. For the first 25 Model FA advisors that sign up, we're dropping the $1,500. So a Model FA advisor could literally sign up, or anyone listening to this can go sign up and either with $1,000 or just $99 a month. And we will build you a landing page. You can start giving this program to your clients and allowing them to write their legacy letter.
I love it. And I appreciate that too. Now, with that being said, just a follow-up question. Oh, I see it here on the pricing page. Is that $1,000 annually or $1,200 if you choose to pay monthly for 99? You can bring your entire client base through that. It's unlimited.
Yep.
Yeah, personally, I think it's a no-brainer.
And I do have some advisors using it for marketing as well. They'll send it to people on their birthday, like, hey, I got you a birthday gift. You're standing out. Like, no one else is sending this as a birthday gift.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. That's a really good idea. Well, cool, man. Blake, this is a pleasure. This is probably the least I've talked on the podcast.
You're saying I talk too much?
Nope. I think that you're enjoyable to listen to. Your message is powerful, and you can tell that your heart is in the right place and you're passionate about providing this for folks and the impact that it's having on their family. And it was easy to just be quiet and listen. I really appreciate that. I want to help grow the business and grow the impact. So we'll be in touch about that. But I mean, for $99 a month or $1,000 annually to give access to your entire client base and your entire prospect pool, I mean, this is an absolute no-brainer. And as you guys know on the podcast, I don't necessarily want it to come off as salesy by any means with any of the guests that we have on, but I truly believe that this is a no-brainer. So check it out, legacyletterchallenge.com/modelfa. In the show notes, there should be another link that's included that will show you what the example landing page looks like for advisors, which is fairly similar to the Model FA one outside of obviously the pricing tabs and whatnot, because your clients aren't being charged for this, but you can see the idea of kind of the co-branding. But Blake, it was a pleasure. I'm looking forward to getting to know you moving forward even more. And thank you so much for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for letting me share my story and helping me help more parents write their letter and more children get a letter from their parents.
Love it. Well, take care.
All right, appreciate it.